Welcome back. Earnings season rolling on. We're getting some pretty important updates from some key energy players. It would be Chevron and Exxon Mobil here. Under pressure a bit. You can see both of those stocks down today after we got a couple top and bottom line beats from both those companies, both reporting profits for the second straight quarter as oil and gas prices hold on to their gains this year. Chevron also reinstated its share repurchase program, signaling quite a bit of confidence when it comes to what the company sees holding up ahead. And for more on that, I want to bring on our next guest to drill down into the energy space. Roger Reed is Wells Fargo Securities Senior Analyst for Refineries and Integrateds, who joins us right now. And Roger, I mean, when we look at this, obviously energy has been a standout, but let's start with Chevron because it does seem like that $2 to $3 billion repurchase program is indeed kind of the gauntlet getting tossed here, saying, look, this is going to hold up. So what did you see in the quarter? And how do you see that strength continuing?
Yeah, thanks, Zach. I think if you look at Chevron reinstating the share repo program, what it gives you is confidence that they feel they've made it through the downturn, obviously, that operations have recovered, and that the acquisition of Noble that they did last year is, that integration is in. They're not expecting any hiccups. And then the other two big important things to look at here, one specific to Chevron, is their big project in Kazakhstan. They were able to come out today and say, look, we're going to increase the contingency a little bit because nobody knows what the Delta variant may do, but the project thus far remains on budget. So that was an important milestone. And then the final piece is you had the OPEC Plus agreement that, looked a little shaky at the beginning of July, got settled a couple of weeks ago. And that essentially laid out how OPEC Plus intends to bring the crude oil back into the global market. And that, provides or creates the environment that says, we know what's coming, we know what our business is, and now we can restart the share repos.
Yeah, and then on the ExxonMobil side of the biz, or the side of today's energy discussion, I should say, I mean, the strength there, $1.10 a share, the highest in more than 2 years, and well above the estimates there that you can see on the screen, 97 cents a share the analysts had. The chemical profits, also the highest on record as the company leads into plastics. I mean, I'm curious to get your take on maybe what we saw there, as I believe you have a price target of, what, $72?
Sounds about right. Yeah, we've liked Exxon. We got positive on it at the end of last year for a couple of reasons. And then you've had some things happen during the year that have built upon that. But one of the big reasons was you saw the company admit that the previous strategy of trying to spend an awful lot of money and pursue growth across all three businesses wasn't one they were going to be able to sustain. And so a lot of times with equities, you're looking for a change in behavior rather than an absolute, cash flow starts rolling in, right? So I think a little what you see today is the company has made some changes. We did get a lot of benefit from the commodity price. The cash is rolling in, the stock sells off a little bit, but none of that changes the fundamental story that the company has changed its strategy a little bit. You had the board changes that, occurred in the month of May, and you're likely to get a reinforcement of that change strategy going forward, as well as embracing some of the energy transition issues that are out there, both in terms of reducing your emissions, but also in terms of using it as a growth area for the company. So, and Chevron is doing that as well. And so I think that's what you're seeing here in the results from Exxon and the share performance today, year to date.
Yeah. Roger, let's talk about that transition. When you look at ExxonMobil as well as Chevron, they've really sort of lagged behind some of their European counterparts in terms of investments in a lower carbon future, if that's sort of the nice way to put it here. Medium term, is that going to be a weight on these stocks? Or you think it could be the idea is that long term, it's going to be a catalyst with more and more demand and investors pressuring the companies to make that transition. But how should we be looking at it in the short term?
Sure, no, it's a really good question, Akiko. I mean, I think what you're looking at on the energy transition is you have a couple of ways of approaching it. One is what are going to be the new growth areas in power generation and energy creation, right? Some of the companies like BP and Shell will say, electrons is what we're going to be moving. What I think you've seen both Exxon and Chevron do, though, is say, look, we're not newbies to this. We have studied solar, we have studied wind, and we just don't see how you're going to make the returns in those businesses relative to oil and gas. And so both have done a little bit more along the lines of biofuels, which do have pretty good returns. They've both looked at carbon capture pretty heavily. Exxon is actually the world leader in it, even before the energy transition was talked about. So I think you'll see them pursue things like that rather than just making a straight shot into an alternative power generation that is already, relatively mature in its technology and has a lot of existing competitors, right? I mean, it's not like there's a shortage of utility companies that aren't already doing everything in wind and solar. And so I think, have Exxon and Chevron invested less? Yes. Is that necessarily a bad strategy? No.
Yeah, it's interesting. Aside from maybe a break from what we've seen in some other growth companies out there, who needs to invest if you're doing it well, and the prices that we've seen come back in the oil side of the business is coming back as well. But Roger Reed, appreciate you coming on here to chat and walk us through all the updates there. Wells Fargo Securities Senior Analyst for Refiners and Integrated. Appreciate you coming on.